Welcome to High Infidelity, the best cheating videos on YouTube. If you enjoy this content, remember to subscribe and turn on notifications. Now let's get into the video.
I moved to nip an affair in the making and it worked. There were a lot of assumptions made in this post about myself, my wife, and our whole relationship. Some really nice, some are awful, some are simply vile. I realize you're just getting a sliver of our life. I tell you that we have been happily married for 32 years and will remain so till death do us part. Hopefully, it will go beyond that. Would any of us go to any length to defend our marriage from all harmful influences in this world? Yes, absolutely. This is a tale that my wife tells more than I do. She has related to our adult children as a warning. She has said that if the scenario were reversed, she would do the same thing. I wouldn't be offended if she did. Throughout the decades we've been married, I've had various close female friends. When my wife sensed that one of these ladies was looking for anything more than friendship, she expressed her worries. That was answered with, "Don't be ridiculous, we're just friends," a few of times. In hindsight, my wife was not acting foolishly. Those connections may have posed a danger to the marriage, but we'll never know since we snuffed them out and prioritized our marriage. All I can ask for everyone here is that they find the same type of happiness that my wife and I do. It's fantastic, and I hope you locate it if you don't already have it. Peace. Update. My wife and I are both reading through this post. We do everything as a group. We work well together. She wanted me to add for anybody else who could be in her situation that sometimes you don't see things like this coming, but if you're not careful, you can wind up destroying the greatest part of your life. She's just as pleased as I am with how everything came out. We're not very religious, but I'd be lying if I said this circumstance didn't make me wonder if there isn't someone out there looking out for us and alerting us when God, the cosmos, or whatever gives a solution to a problem. Don't dismiss it. I know I was really fortunate to have this chance. I was at a loss for what to do. I felt so helpless. That is not the case for many individuals, and my heart hurts for them. I'll never cease being grateful for how fortunate I was. Story 2. My wife was cheating on me our entire marriage, picked up an STD that gave her cancer, and died as a result. How do I move on from here? My wife and I met in the spring of 2004. I was 27 at the time, and she was 25. She was stunning and had a childlike innocence. Everywhere we went, she turned heads. She also looked to be truly kind and came from what appeared to be a wonderful family. I had to learn the hard way, however, that her beauty was just skin deep. We had a terrific relationship for the first 6 months, but then red flags began to arise, which I disregarded. Later that year, in 2004, she became pregnant, my pregnancy verified years later, but she started withholding intimacy. She assured me that it will pass and that it was only a phase brought on by the pregnancy. I believed her and proposed in May 2005, right before our baby was born. We married in 2006, with the intimacy difficulties still unresolved. Throughout their marriage, she avoided intimacy, even on their honeymoon. Throughout the first 3 years of our marriage, she withheld intimacy, maybe once every 6 months. For me, the tension was intolerable. She did, however, decide to have with me once, ultimately initiating after a 6-month dry period. She conveniently informed me as I reached my climax that she had forgotten to take her medication. In May of 2009, we welcomed our son. We were surprised later that year when she was diagnosed with head and neck cancer after discovering tumors on her neck. However, after extensive therapy and scans, physicians informed us in 2011 that they had misdiagnosed her disease and that it was, in reality, cervical cancer caused by an STD, HPV. Given how little we had in the fact that I hadn't been with anybody since before I met her, this was a warning sign I couldn't ignore. I stooped on her phone and email and discovered a treasure mine of emails and messages indicating she had several affairs beginning only months after we met, going up to and during the wedding, and then throughout the marriage until her illness. There were messages indicating that she had no idea whose kid our daughter was. More text followed, revealing that she had aborted another person's kid only a few months after our wedding. One she had told me and her family was a miscarriage. Worst of all, she discovered messages between her and another man in which they argued about how she felt he had given her the HPV that caused her illness. The magnitude of it all suffocated me. She denied everything when I approached her. She told me I was insane and that maybe that was why she hadn't let me have intimacy. I'm mild-mannered to a fault, which she despised. She relished conflict and often used emotional outbursts to intimidate me when I asked why we weren't having. She had always struggled with responsibility, but this was beyond vexing. I started by laying out the facts, beginning with the most recent affair. "Oh, you knew," she said dismissively. "No, I did not." I then presented more proof. Even with the facts in front of her, she would ignore it as if it had never occurred. I'd ask her if that was all there was to it. "Yes," she'd say. Then I'd provide additional proof and confront her with her falsehoods. This occurred again and again until I eventually understood that she had no intention of confessing or apologizing. In October of 2011, I moved out. Throughout our separation, she would attempt to get me to move back in by saying things that made me feel sorry for her. "It's almost as though you're simply waiting for me to die." I'm not embarrassed to confess it. I simply wanted to be reunited with my children and get over this horror. I despised her and what she'd done. I didn't even bother filing for divorce since I knew cancer would take her. On November 19, 2013, it did. She died slowly and in ugliness, still attempting to cover up all her lies and deception. I'm now raising our 2 children on my own, and we're doing well. As you can guess, I have a lot of trust problems that will probably never go away. Since then, I haven't dated. My daughter has my wife's old phone, which she refuses to delete since she enjoys reading old text messages and keeping contacts from back then. Unfortunately, no matter how carefully I clean the worst of the text conversations, this implies she has come across the truth several times. She is 16 years old and knows everything that has occurred. We have a really strong connection and discuss anything honestly. Nonetheless, she sees a therapist on a regular basis to help her recover in ways that I cannot. My youngster is aware of everything, yet he is entirely uninterested. After all, he's 12 now and was only 4 when Mom died. As a matter of principle, I will not lie to children, even to protect them, because I believe that falsehoods are what got us here. I can only think how they would feel if they found out as adults, and from someone other than me. I've continued to transport the kids up to where her family resides from where we live, for the holidays and for lengthy periods during the summers. They are, for the most part, nice folks who are kind and done nothing to deserve being separated from their grandchildren. My kids adore them, and they have many relatives their own age in their extended family. They go out of their way to make us feel welcome, and I like their company. The only strange thing about all of this is that her family has never recognized anything that occurred. There was no cheating, and there was no justification for the separation. In fact, they never speak about any of it at all, which is really aggravating and unpleasant for a person who wants to talk about things to solve them. When we broke up, she begged me not to tell anybody, but she promised to notify her family. I was comfortable with it since I had always considered it a private concern. She then gossiped about me to the parents of the kids' friends as well as the teachers. I only found out about this via her text messages after she died. However, it's unclear to me how honest she was with her family. Because they never admit anything occurred, I can only believe they either don't know or know, but find it too tough to discuss. I don't want to upset her family, but I'd want something they have that is properly mine. The rings, engagement, and wedding. Since her mother and sister emptied her room after she died, I'm assuming one of them grabbed the rings. They most likely did this at her request, maybe to give to my daughter later in life on a special occasion. Regardless, I don't consider them to have ever belonged to her since her infidelity was so prevalent throughout our relationship. They simply signify adultery, and they will never be as significant or symbolic to another person as they will be to me when I finally get rid of them. I sacrificed and saved, buying them for her when we didn't have anything, and I believed we were in love. If only I'd known. My question to the audience is, how can you stop thinking about it all? It's been 8 years since Mom died, and I still can't sleep when I go to bed. I basically rehash our disputes and chats. I reflect on how I should have handled circumstances better, how I should have spoken up for myself sooner when the red lights began to appear. I do all of this fully aware that there is nothing I can do about it right now. In the past 8 years, I've aged 24 years. I'm 44 years old, yet I look 64. At this pace, I won't be around to provide fatherly advice when my children marry and maybe have children of their own. Emotionally, I'd want to find closure and atonement and stop blaming myself for my blindness throughout those years of agony.